I was sentenced to 15 years of slow death, not by a court, not by any human hand, but by an invisible sickness that chained me to a sickbed. Day after day, month after month, year after year, I watched my body waste away, my children grow up beside me, and my faith tested in ways I never imagined. I clung to the Quran. I prayed every prayer. I whispered every name of Allah I had memorized. But no matter how much I recited, no matter how many tears I shed on my prayer mat, the healing I longed for never came. And that is where my story begins, not with life, but with death, stretching out in slow motion, 15 long years where I begged for a miracle that never came. But when I least expected it, two simple verses from the Bible would pierce the silence of my suffering and do what years of Islamic devotion and thousands of Quranic recitations could never accomplish. They healed me, not only my body, but my soul. Before I tell you about those two verses and why they carry power beyond anything I had ever known, I need to take you back. Back to the life I once believed was unshakable. Back to the woman I used to be before my sickbed became my teacher, my prison, and finally, my pulpit. Let me begin with this. What you're about to hear may not stay online forever. Stories like mine are silenced, ridiculed, even threatened into hiding. But I know one thing for certain, someone listening right now needs this truth. Maybe that someone is you. So don't treat this as just another testimony. Treat this as a message that may be the last chance you get to prepare your heart. Because the two verses that healed me can heal you too, but only if you're willing to listen until the very end. I was born into a family that prided itself on faith. My father was respected in the community, my mother taught children the words of the Quran, and I grew up believing we were favored because of our devotion. I prayed 5 times a day, I fasted faithfully every Ramadan, I covered myself in hijab as both a duty and a shield. I gave zakat, taught at the madrasa, even completed the Hajj pilgrimage twice. From the outside, I was a model believer, someone who looked unshakable, untouchable, and secure. Inside, though, tiny cracks formed, questions I never dared voice. Why were good people outside Islam condemned to eternal punishment? Why did my daughters grow up fearing God more than loving Him? Why did I feel so empty after completing every ritual that was supposed to bring peace? But I buried those questions. I smothered them under layers of devotion, thinking faith meant never doubting. Then came the sickness. It started as fatigue. I told myself it was overwork. Then came pain, deep and gnawing in my bones and my stomach. Doctors examined me, but none could give a name to what was happening. Stress, one said. Hormonal imbalance, another suggested. But the pain didn't go away. It spread, multiplied, until each day felt like lifting mountains just to get out of bed. Soon I couldn't walk without help. My children learned to fetch water for me, to adjust my pillows, to hear me weep when I thought no one was listening. Still, I turned to faith. I whispered verses from the Quran until my throat burned. I pressed my forehead to the prayer mat until the fabric was wet with tears. I begged Allah to heal me because surely, if anyone deserved His mercy, it was me. But silence answered. Months turned into years. I lost count after 5. My body became frail, my muscles wasted, and my heart carried the weight of unanswered prayers. Friends came and went. At first they encouraged me, be patient, sister, Allah is testing you. Later, they visited less. My sickness made them uncomfortable, as though my unanswered prayers might expose the fragility of theirs. My children asked hard questions I couldn't answer. Mama, why doesn't Allah make you better? Why do other people get healed, but not you? I repeated the same rehearsed answers I had been told. Allah's ways are higher. We cannot question His will. But inside, their words cut me. At night, when the house was quiet, I whispered the same questions myself. Why, Allah, why leave me here to rot? Am I not your servant? Have I not obeyed you? Where is your mercy? The silence grew heavier. 15 years is long enough to either break you or break open a door you never knew existed. I didn't realize it at the time, but every unanswered prayer was preparing me for an encounter that would rip the veil from my eyes. Because the truth is this: Islam could not heal me. The Quran could not heal me. My rituals, my tears, my devotion, they could not heal me. But there was one who could. I'm going to tell you the exact 2 verses that healed me, but not yet. If I give them to you now, you may shrug them off, like just another quote, just another set of words. I need you to see what I saw, feel what I felt, walk through the fire I walked through. Only then will those 2 verses strike your heart with the power they carried when I first read them. So stay with me, because these words are not ordinary. They hold life. They held me when I was already half in the grave, and they might just be the very words you need tonight. If you stay this long, it means your heart is searching. Don't ignore that. Too many people scroll away from the very truth that could save them. Don't let that be you. Subscribe, share, and comment, not for me, but because someone in your life may need this story as much as you do. This is not just my story, it is a warning and a promise. A warning that devotion without truth leaves you empty. A promise that Jesus is still healing, still saving, and still calling even in the darkest sickbed. And my journey began on that bed. 15 years of waiting, suffering, and questioning. But as you'll see, what I thought was the end of my life was only the beginning of a miracle that would shake my world to its core. My name is Samira Haddad, and before the sickness came, I thought I had everything a woman of faith could want. I was born in a devout Muslim family, one that valued honor, tradition, and unshakable obedience to God. My father was a respected imam in our local mosque, and my mother taught Arabic to neighborhood children. From the time I could walk, I was taught that the purpose of my life was to serve Allah, to defend His truth, and to keep myself pure from the world outside. As a girl, I memorized large portions of the Quran, reciting them at family gatherings to the praise of uncles and aunts who called me the jewel of our faith. I wore the hijab by choice, even before it was required, proud that people looked at me and saw devotion. By my teenage years, I had become known in our community as someone who could correct even elders in proper Quranic recitation. In those days, I believed I was secure. Secure in my identity, secure in my religion, secure in the rituals that gave shape to my life. At 22, I married Karim, a man deeply committed to Islam, admired for his discipline and his unwavering defense of our traditions. Our wedding was simple but joyful, celebrated by the entire mosque community. I remember feeling certain that this was the beginning of a perfect life, a home where Allah would be honored, children raised in the truth, and neighbors impressed by our faithfulness. And for a while, it seemed to be exactly that. We had 3 children in the first 10 years of marriage. Layla, our eldest daughter, Hassan, our son, and little Mariam, whose laughter could brighten even the darkest winter days. From their earliest words, I taught them Bismillah before eating, Alhamdulillah before sleeping. Every part of our home was soaked in rituals and rules. I was proud when my children sat cross-legged in the madrasa, repeating the same verses I had once memorized. I watched Karim beam with pride as Hassan stood in line at the mosque, tiny shoulders square, mimicking the men in prayer. This, I thought, was the fruit of my labor. To the outside world, I was the picture of a successful Muslim woman. I prayed 5 times a day without fail, even setting alarms at work to excuse myself for Dhuhr and Asr. During Ramadan, I cooked elaborate meals for neighbors after long days of fasting, telling myself each bite I served would weigh on the scales of my good deeds. I gave zakat dutifully, sponsoring orphans in countries I had never visited. Twice, I performed Hajj, feeling awe as I circled the Kaaba, convinced I was touching the very heart of God's truth. I carried the Quran like a shield. In moments of stress, I pressed it to my chest, whispering verses like charms. I judged others, sometimes silently, sometimes out loud, for being lax in their faith. Women without hijabs, men who missed prayer, families who let their children mingle too freely with non-Muslims. I pitied them all, certain they would answer for their negligence on the last day. Inside, though, there were cracks. It started with whispers in my mind, questions I pushed down as soon as they rose. Why did God need me to repeat the same prayers 5 times a day? Was He not already all-knowing? Why was my testimony worth only half of a man's in the eyes of our law? Why did verses speak of hellfire not only for the wicked, but for kind neighbors who simply believed differently? I remember my eldest daughter, Layla, once asking me about her school friend, a Christian girl named Chloe. Mama, will Chloe go to hell? She's so kind. She always shares her food with me. The words stung, but I gave the only answer I knew. Kindness is not enough. Without Islam, there is no paradise. Even as I said it, the words felt like ash in my mouth. But I quickly buried the feeling. Faith, I told myself, was not about feelings, but obedience. Doubt was a temptation of Satan, a test I must resist. My life became a performance of devotion, a carefully polished mask. I avoided birthday parties at work, refusing cake in the break room because it felt too Western. I distanced myself from colleagues who drank wine or spoke too freely about relationships. Even when I smiled politely, there was always a wall between me and them, a wall I believed God wanted me to build. Yet, the higher the wall, the lonelier I became. I remember nights when Karim and I argued not about money or children, but about doctrine. He was stricter than I, and his solution to every question was, pray harder, trust Allah more, don't question. I admired his certainty, but secretly, I envied it too. For me, the questions never fully went away, they only sank deeper. One morning stands out, a memory etched in my soul. I had risen early for Fajr, my children still asleep, the sky just turning pale. As I prayed, I felt an unusual heaviness in my chest. Not physical pain, but something deeper, a quiet despair I couldn't explain. I finished the prayer, whispered Alhamdulillah, but when I stood, tears streamed down my face without warning. I asked myself, why do I feel so far from God when I have done everything He asked of me? I brushed the thought aside, preparing breakfast before the children woke. Karim noticed my red eyes and asked if I was unwell. I smiled and said it was nothing, but deep inside, I knew something had shifted. I didn't realize it then, but that morning was the first sign of what was to come, the beginning of the sickness that would trap me in a bed for 15 years, tearing down every illusion I had built, forcing me to face questions I had silenced all my life. If you had looked at me that day, you would have seen a woman who seemed strong in her faith, proud of her family, respected in her community. You would have thought I was untouchable. But beneath the surface, cracks were spreading. And soon, my body itself would become the battlefield where faith and truth collided. The sickness was coming, and it would not only strip away my strength, it would strip away every certainty I thought I held. If you've ever buried questions you were too afraid to ask, then you already know the weight I carried. Don't run from that weight, face it. And while you're here, don't just listen silently. Subscribe, share, or comment, because sometimes your small action can be the spark that helps another person trapped in the same prison. The first wave of sickness came softly, almost politely, as though it was knocking at the door of my life instead of crashing through it. At first, it was nothing more than fatigue. I told myself I was tired from managing the household, teaching Quran to neighborhood children, and keeping up with Karim's expectations as a wife. I pushed through, the way I always had, convincing myself that true devotion meant ignoring weakness. But within months, fatigue grew into something darker. My body began to betray me. A dull ache spread through my bones. At night, my joints throbbed so severely I couldn't find a position to rest. My head pounded with migraines that blurred my vision. I would lie awake in the dark, whispering surahs into the air like medicine, waiting for relief that never came. Karim insisted I see a doctor. We went to one, then another, then another. Each time, I hoped for a simple answer, an infection, a deficiency, something we could fix with a prescription. Instead, I received puzzled faces. We don't see anything abnormal in your blood work. Perhaps it's stress-related. It could be autoimmune, but we can't pinpoint which one. Months turned into years of hospital visits, scans, and unanswered questions. My body grew weaker, but every medical file came back with more confusion than clarity. The word chronic began to appear in hushed conversations between doctors. And so I turned back to what I had always trusted, the Quran. I began reciting verses not just 5 times a day, but constantly. I kept the tasbih by my bedside, running the beads through my fingers until the grooves pressed marks into my skin. I memorized supplications for healing, whispered them over cups of water, and drank them down like sacred medicine. Karim brought home honey and black seed oil, remedies praised in Islamic tradition. He massaged my legs with olive oil, quoting hadiths about its blessing. Friends visited with Zamzam water from Mecca, assuring me that a single sip held miraculous power. And yet, nothing changed. Each morning, I woke to the same pain. Each evening, I lay down with the same heaviness pressing against my chest. There were days when I forced myself to believe I felt better, clinging to hope like a fragile thread. But the truth was clear. The rituals I once found comfort in had become empty echoes in a room filled with silence. By the 5th year, my body could no longer keep up with my mind. I stopped teaching at the madrasa. I could barely stand long enough to cook dinner. Karim hired a young woman from our community to help with the children, and though I smiled in gratitude, inside I wept. I hated the way my children looked at me with pity. Layla would quietly cover me with a blanket when I fell asleep on the couch. Hassan fetched my medicine without being asked. Little Maryam, too young to understand, sometimes climbed onto my lap, confused when I winced at her weight. I should have been the one serving them, teaching them, guiding them. Instead, they were learning to care for me. My sickbed was no longer just a place of rest, it was my prison. At first, people from the mosque came to visit often. They prayed over me, recited Quran at my bedside, and assured me that this was a test of my faith. Sister Samira, Allah loves those He tests. Endure patiently, and your reward will be great. I nodded, smiled weakly, and tried to believe them. But as the years dragged on, the visits grew less frequent. Their pity turned into discomfort. Some whispered that perhaps I had done something to displease Allah. Others wondered why my prayers went unanswered when so many others claimed healing after similar supplications. Even Karim's patience began to wear thin. He still prayed beside me, still brought imams to recite ruqya over my body, but I saw the frustration in his eyes. He wanted his wife back, the strong, vibrant woman who had once carried the household with joy. I wanted her back too, but she was gone, replaced by a shadow chained to the sickbed. The hardest part wasn't the pain, it was the questions. One evening, as I lay propped up by pillows, Layla sat beside me. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Mama, why doesn't Allah make you better? You pray more than anyone I know. You love him so much. Why is he not listening? I froze. The rehearsed answers I had always used felt hollow. I forced a smile and stroked her hair. Allah's ways are higher, my daughter. We cannot always understand his timing. But inside, her words cut me open. If Allah truly loved me, why leave me here for years, wasting away in front of my children? Why heal others but not me? That night, I cried silently, not just from pain, but from the terror of admitting what I had never dared to say aloud. What if Allah doesn't hear me at all? What I thought would be a season of illness stretched into years, then a decade, then almost half of my life. 15 years of unanswered prayers, 15 years of watching life pass me by, 15 years of wondering if I was cursed, forgotten, or worse, ignored. By the 12th year, my body was so frail I could not stand without support. My bones felt brittle, my skin paper thin. Doctors had given up trying to name my condition. You may have to accept this as permanent, one finally told me. His words felt like a death sentence. I returned home from that appointment and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I whispered verses from the Quran until my throat went raw. Still, nothing. No healing, no peace, just silence. As the years wore on, my devotion grew desperate. I fasted outside of Ramadan, hoping extra sacrifice would tip the scales in my favor. I begged Allah in the stillness of the night, tears soaking my prayer mat. But instead of comfort, I felt a widening gulf inside me. The more I prayed, the more hollow it felt. There were nights I stared at my reflection, a frail woman with sunken eyes, and whispered, "Am I invisible to you? Do you even see me?" I never dared speak those words to anyone, not to Karim, not to my children, not to the imams who visited, but the questions haunted me like shadows on the wall. Looking back now, I see that the silence of those years was not absence, it was preparation. I didn't know it then, but my sickbed had become the stage for something far greater than healing. It was the place where the foundations of everything I believed would be shaken, where the God I thought I knew would be stripped away, and where I would finally encounter the one who truly sees, truly heals, and truly saves. But I wasn't there yet. At that point, all I knew was 15 years of pain, 15 years of silence, 15 years of a God who did not answer. And in that silence, despair began whispering that maybe no one was listening at all. What I didn't know was that the sickbed I cursed would soon become the doorway to an encounter I never imagined. And when that encounter came, it would not be through the Quran or through endless prayers in Arabic. It would come through a light I had been taught to reject, a name I had been warned never to call upon. If you've ever begged God for an answer and felt only silence, then you already know the pain I carry. Don't turn away now, because the silence I endured for 15 years was broken in a way that could change your life too. Subscribe, share, and comment. You never know whose silent prayers may be answered through the story. There comes a point when pain stops being a visitor and becomes a housemate. For me, it was sometime around the 7th year of my illness. By then, the sickness had seeped into every corner of my life. My body was weak, my spirit weary, and my mind constantly circling the same question: why isn't God answering me? The days blurred together. Morning bled into night, and night into endless hours of staring at the ceiling. Kareem went to work, the children went to school, and I stayed in my prison of sheets and pillows. I no longer counted time by calendars, but by the sounds of my house. The clink of dishes told me it was mealtime. The call to prayer from the mosque told me another hour had passed. The creak of my children's footsteps on the stairs told me I had survived another day. But what kind of survival was this? I was alive in body, but dead in every other way. Every night, I prayed with desperation. I whispered the 99 names of Allah until my lips trembled. I begged for mercy, for strength, for a sign that He had not abandoned me. But the silence was louder than any answer. It was a silence that mocked me, a silence that grew heavier with every unanswered prayer, a silence that made me wonder if my voice was bouncing off the ceiling and falling back down to me unheard. I thought about the Quran's words, how Allah was said to be closer than the jugular vein. If that was true, why did He feel farther than the stars? By the 9th year, even the rituals that once comforted me became chained. I used to recite the Quran and feel peace in the rhythm of the words. Now, the same verses felt like hollow sounds echoing in an empty chamber. I fasted outside of Ramadan, but instead of feeling holy, I only felt hunger gnawing at me with no reward. Once, I tried to drag myself onto the prayer mat, but I collapsed halfway, my body too frail to finish the motions. As I lay there, I whispered through tears, "If you are testing me, I am failing. If you are near, I cannot feel you." I had been taught that sickness was a test of faith, that patience would earn me reward in paradise, but patience had turned into despair. 15 years felt like a lifetime sentence with no parole. I started asking questions, first silently, then softly, until finally I dared to voice them. I asked Karim one night, my voice barely above a whisper, "Why would Allah allow me to suffer this long without relief? Haven't I been faithful? Haven't I done everything He required?" His face tightened. "Do not question Allah's wisdom, Samira. This is His will. To doubt is dangerous." I nodded, but my heart sank. Dangerous to whom? To Allah, or to the people who couldn't bear to face the cracks in our faith? When the Imam visited, I asked him too, "Why do some people receive healing after reciting Quran, but not me? Why is Allah silent to me?" He smiled gently, but his words stung. "Perhaps your faith is not strong enough. Pray more, trust more. Do not let Satan whisper doubts in your heart." It was the same answer I had given others for years, but now that it was given to me, it felt cruel. It felt like being told my pain was my fault. My children were no longer small. Layla was a teenager, Hassan a young man, Mariam no longer a little girl. They had grown up watching their mother waste away, and though they loved me, I could see questions burning in their eyes. One evening, Layla sat beside me, her face tense. "Mama, do you really believe Allah hears you?" Her question shocked me. I wanted to reassure her, to defend the faith I had spent my life protecting, but the truth slipped out instead. "I don't know anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then what hope do we have?" I pulled her close, my own tears mingling with hers. In that moment, I realized my sickness was not only destroying me, it was destroying the faith of my children. In those years, I began having vivid dreams. Some were nightmares, shadowy figures pressing on my chest, whispers in languages I didn't understand, suffocating darkness that made me wake gasping for air. Other nights, I saw glimpses of light, gentle, radiant, unlike anything I had felt before. But I always woke before I could understand it. I told Karim about the nightmares, and he brought another imam to perform ruqya over me. He recited verses, blew into water for me to drink, and declared that jinn might be troubling me. But the rituals changed nothing. The shadows returned the next night. The light, though it lingered in my mind, a warmth, a presence, a whisper of hope. I tried to dismiss it, but deep inside, I longed for it to come again. By the 13th year, Despair became my constant companion. One night, alone in the dark, I finally broke. I pressed my face into the pillow and screamed, not out loud, but into my soul. Are you even there? Do you see me? Do you care? The silence was deafening. I thought of ending it all. My body was already half dead. Why not finish what God seemed unwilling to change? But then I saw the faces of my children. Layla, Hassan, Maryam. I couldn't leave them. So I stayed trapped between life and death, between faith and despair. And yet, even in that pit of despair, strange things began to happen. Once, as I lay half asleep, I thought I heard a voice, not harsh, not distant, but tender. It said only one thing, I see you. I jolted awake, my heart pounding. No one was in the room. I told myself it was imagination, a trick of exhaustion. But deep inside, a seed was planted. Could it be that someone else was watching me in this darkness? Someone who was not silent? I didn't know it then, but my despair was not the end, it was the doorway. Because the sickbed that had been my prison for 15 years was about to become the stage for the most powerful encounter of my life. An encounter that would rip apart everything I thought I knew about God and show me a truth I had never dared consider. It would happen when my body finally failed, when my heart stopped beating, and when I crossed into a realm I had been taught to fear. And there, in that place between life and death, I would meet the one who had whispered, I see you. The silence of 15 years was about to break, but not in the way I expected. Not through the Quran, not through endless prayers, not through any ritual I had trusted. No, the answer would come in a way that shattered everything I believed. If you've ever felt abandoned by God, like your prayers rise no higher than the ceiling, then you know the torment I lived with for 15 years. Don't walk away now. What came next is the very reason you're still listening. Subscribe, share, and comment, not for me, but for someone you know who may be praying in silence right now, wondering if anyone sees them. I had grown used to living in the valley between life and death, but I never imagined I would one day cross that valley entirely. It was the 15th year of my sickness. My body was little more than skin and bone. My organs were failing. Doctors spoke to Karim in hushed tones, avoiding my eyes when they entered the room. I knew what they were thinking. She doesn't have much time left. But nothing could prepare me for the night my heart finally gave out. It began quietly, as most nights did. Karim had gone to sleep. The children were in their rooms. The house was wrapped in silence. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when suddenly a crushing weight pressed against my chest. Pain shot down my left arm. My breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. I tried to call out, but my voice cracked into silence. The room spun. My vision blurred. My body convulsed in agony. And then, nothing. Darkness. I heard voices, Karim's frantic shouts, the sound of footsteps pounding the floor, the crash of a glass of water falling, then sirens, distant but growing closer. The chaos swirled around me, but it no longer belonged to me, because I was gone. The first thing I felt was weightlessness. The pain that had gripped me moments before was gone. I opened my eyes, and to my shock, I was no longer lying in the bed, I was floating above it. I looked down and saw my own body, pale, limp, unmoving, my husband shaking me, his tears dripping onto my lifeless face, my children screaming in terror, their hands clutching at the sheets. I wanted to reach for them, to tell them I was still there, but my hands passed through them like smoke. And then I felt a pull, a force stronger than gravity itself, drawing me upward. I resisted at first, terrified, but the pull was gentle, like an unseen hand lifting me from the wreckage of my broken body. I rose higher until the room disappeared beneath me. The sound of sirens faded, the cries of my children dissolved, and I was swallowed into silence. At first, the silence was comforting, then it became unsettling. I was moving through a tunnel, vast and endless, its walls alive with shifting shadows. Some whispered in languages I didn't understand. Others reached toward me, clawing, desperate. Fear gripped me. I tried to recite the Quran, the verses I had memorized since childhood. I whispered them into the void. But the words dissolved before they left my lips, powerless, like dust scattering in the wind. Panic surged. For the first time, I realized the Quran could not save me here. And then suddenly the shadows fled. A radiant light appeared at the end of the tunnel, brighter than the sun, yet gentle to behold. It was not just light, it was life itself, pouring warmth into every part of me. The pull grew stronger, drawing me toward it. I resisted, afraid, but the closer I came, the more peace flooded me. When I reached the light, I fell to my knees, and there he was. A man, clothed in white, his face shining with love beyond comprehension. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw not judgment, not anger, but a love so deep it pierced the darkest corners of my soul. Samira, he said, calling me by name. I see you. I have always seen you. Tears poured down my face. Who are you? I whispered, though part of me already knew. I am Jesus. In his presence, memories of the last 15 years flashed before me, the prayers, the rituals, the silence. Why didn't you heal me? I cried. Why did you leave me to suffer all those years? He reached out, and his touch felt like fire and water all at once, burning away despair, washing me clean. I was with you in every moment, he said. But you sought healing in words without life. You searched for God in a book. But God is standing before you now. Healing is not something I give. It is who I am. At those words, I fell flat before him, undone. Then he showed me visions. I saw millions bowing in mosques, their foreheads pressed to the ground, believing they were drawing near to God. But invisible chains bound them, keeping their hearts turned away from him. I saw myself among them teaching children to silence their doubts, warning young believers never to question, insisting salvation came through deeds and rituals. My heart broke. I didn't know, I whispered. Jesus looked at me with compassion. You were blind, but now you see. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Then he showed me my family. I saw Karim's anger when I would tell him of this encounter. I saw my children torn between love for me and loyalty to the faith they had been taught. I saw whispers, rejection, even threats. Fear rose in me. I cannot bear that. I will lose everything. Jesus' gaze never wavered. You will lose what was never yours to keep, but you will gain what can never be taken away. And through your testimony, others will find freedom. I felt myself weakening, as though my time in his presence was ending. Desperation surged. Don't send me back. I want to stay with you. But he smiled. It is not your time. I am sending you back with a mission. And when you return, you will find 2 verses, 2 words of life that will heal not only your body, but your soul. You must share them, Samira. They will be the key for many who are waiting. The tunnel reappeared. The shadows tried to creep back, but they shrank from his light. I felt myself being pulled downward, back into the darkness, back toward the world I thought I had left forever. His final words echoed in my heart as I fell. Remember, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. I gasped awake, my chest heaving, doctors shouting over me, machines beeped, lights blinded my eyes. One doctor whispered in disbelief. She was gone 15 minutes with no heartbeat. How is she alive? Karim gripped my hand, tears streaming down his face. Alhamdulillah, you're back! But I knew the woman who had left that body was not the same one who returned. Something had changed, something eternal. I had seen Jesus. I had heard his voice. I had felt his love. But the promise he gave me, the 2 verses that would heal me completely, had not yet come. And when they did, they would not only restore my body, but set fire to everything I thought I knew about truth, faith, and God. If you've ever wondered what lies beyond death, don't dismiss this moment. I was gone for 15 minutes, and what I saw changes everything. Subscribe, share, and comment, not because I need it, but because someone you love may need to hear that Jesus is more than a prophet, more than a teacher. He is life itself. When I returned from the brink of death, nothing looked the same. The sterile white of the hospital ceiling seemed pale compared to the glory I had seen. The voices of doctors and nurses sounded muted, like echoes from far away. And though my body was broken, tubes running from my arms, machines beeping beside me, my soul was alive in a way it had never been before. I had seen Jesus, but he had given me a promise that 2 verses would come, and that they would heal not only my body but my soul. At the time, I didn't know where or how I would find him. All I knew was that I had to wait. The doctors called my survival a miracle. 15 minutes with no heartbeat. One said, shaking his head, "By all accounts, she should have brain damage." But I was alert, sharp, fully present. Physically, though, I remained frail. My bones ached, my muscles trembled, every step was a battle. Karim stayed by my side, whispering prayers of thanks to Allah. He believed my survival was proof of Allah's mercy, but I knew the truth. I hadn't returned because of Allah's mercy. I had returned because Jesus had sent me back, and yet the healing he promised had not yet come. Once back home, I noticed something stirring inside me, a hunger, not of the body, but of the spirit. I found myself longing for the presence I had felt in the tunnel, the warmth of his eyes, the sound of his voice. My prayer mat, once my refuge, now felt like cold stone. The Quran, once a comfort, felt like a closed door. Late at night, when Karim and the children were asleep, I began searching online. Quietly, secretly, I typed the name I had been taught never to utter with reverence: Jesus Christ. Page after page opened before me, testimonies of Muslims who had met him in dreams, stories of healings, verses from the Bible translated into languages I could understand. My heart pounded as I read, as though each word carried light. One night, I opened the digital Bible for the first time. My hand trembled as I scrolled, unsure where to begin. I whispered, "Lord, if this is real, show me what you want me to see." The page stopped at Matthew 11:28. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." The words pierced me. Weary, burdened, that was me. 15 years of sickness, despair, unanswered prayers. I was crushed under the weight of a God I could never please. And here was Jesus, not commanding, not demanding, but inviting. "Come to me." For the first time in 15 years, I felt rest wash over me. Tears streamed down my face. I whispered, "Yes, Lord, I am coming." That night, I slept without pain for the first time in years. The next evening, I returned to the Bible, hungry for more. Again, I prayed, "Show me the word that heals." This time, my eyes landed on 1 Peter 2:24. He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross, so that we might die to sin and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. The words leapt off the screen. By his wounds, you have been healed. It was as though the verse had been written just for me. My sickness, my despair, my sin, all of it had been carried by him. Healing was not something I had to earn, not something hidden behind rituals, not something to beg for in Arabic verses I barely understood. It was already done. By his wounds, it was finished. I whispered the verse aloud again and again, until it felt like fire in my bones. By his wounds, I am healed. By his wounds, I am healed. As I spoke those words, something happened. Heat surged through my body, starting in my chest and spreading outward like a wave. My hands, once frail and trembling, grew steady. My legs tingled with strength I hadn't felt in years. I swung my feet over the edge of the bed, heart racing. Slowly, trembling, I stood. For the first time in 15 years, I stood without help. Kareem rushed into the room, his eyes wide with shock. "Samira, sit down! You'll hurt yourself!" But I didn't sit. I walked first one step, then another across the room. Tears streamed down my face. "I'm healed," I whispered. "Jesus healed me." The next day, Kareem took me back to the hospital. The doctors examined me, bewildered. "Your blood work is normal," one said, flipping through charts. "The inflammation markers are gone. The organ damage, it's reversed. This is impossible." Impossible to them. But not to the one who had touched me. I smiled through tears. It was Jesus. He healed me. They exchanged nervous glances, writing spontaneous recovery in their notes. But I knew better. When I told Kareem the truth, his face darkened. "Don't say that," he snapped. "Allah healed you. The doctors were wrong about your sickness all along. Don't disgrace our family with this talk of Jesus." But I couldn't stay silent. "No, Kareem, it was his word. He gave me 2 verses, and by his wounds, I am healed." Our children listened in silence, their eyes wide. Layla looked thoughtful, as though something inside her stirred. Hassan frowned, repeating arguments he had learned at the madrasa. "Jesus was only a prophet, Mama. He didn't die on a cross." Little Maryam, with innocence only a child could carry, whispered, "Can I love Jesus too?" Her words broke me. "Yes, my daughter," I said, holding her close. "Yes, you can." News spread quickly through the community. People had seen me frail for years, confined to bed. Now, suddenly, I was walking. Strong, alive. Some called it a miracle of Allah. Others whispered that I had been deceived by the devil. But I knew the 2 verses Jesus gave me were my lifeline, my healing, my truth. I began sharing them quietly, first with my sister, then with a close friend. Some wept as they heard, others turned away in anger. But every time I spoke the verses aloud, I felt their power again. It was then I realized why Jesus had told me to wait. If he had given me those verses in the tunnel, I might not have believed. But after 15 years of silence, 15 years of unanswered prayers, their power was undeniable. The Quran had left me weary and burdened, but in Matthew 11:28, I found rest. My sickness had chained me to a bed. But in 1 Peter 2:24, I found healing. 2 verses, 2 promises, 2 lifelines that carried me from death into life. But healing came with a cost. My family's anger grew. My community turned against me. The same people who once respected me now saw me as a traitor. I had been healed in body and soul, but I was about to face persecution I never imagined. If you're still listening, ask yourself, what are you clinging to that cannot save you? For 15 years, I clung to rituals that left me empty. Don't wait until despair swallows you. Comment, share, subscribe, not to glorify me, but so that someone you know can hear that rest and healing are already offered freely in the name of Jesus. Healing should have been the end of my suffering. Instead, it was the beginning of a new kind of pain. I had imagined that when my body was restored, joy would fill my home and peace would return to my family. But instead of celebration, my testimony became a dividing sword. When I first walked across the living room without assistance, Karim stared in stunned silence. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched. Alhamdulillah, he whispered, almost to himself. Allah has shown mercy. But when I spoke the truth, his face changed. No, Karim, I said, my voice steady. It was not Allah, it was Jesus. He healed me. His eyes blazed. Don't say that name in this house, he shouted, slamming his hand against the wall. Do you want to destroy everything we've built? Do you want our children to grow up in shame? I tried to explain, tried to tell him about the verses, about the presence I had felt, about the wounds that brought my healing, but every word only made him angrier. You are deluded, he spat. This is Satan tricking you. If you keep speaking this blasphemy, you will tear this family apart. My children's reactions were as different as their personalities. Layla, now almost an adult, listened with quiet intensity. When I shared the 2 verses with her, her eyes filled with tears. Mama, she whispered, when you read them, I feel something too. Something warm, something real. Hassan, on the other hand, recoiled. Stop, Mama! Don't say that! He repeated the words he had memorized from madrasa. Jesus was not crucified. He was only a prophet. You are believing lies. His anger was fierce, but behind it, I saw fear, the fear of questioning everything he had been taught. Little Mariam was caught in the middle. She hugged me tightly and asked in her soft, innocent voice, can I love both Jesus and Allah? Her question shattered me. I held her close, my heart breaking. Sweetheart, I whispered, Jesus is enough. He is more than enough. News of my healing spread quickly, but so did rumors. At first, neighbors congratulated Karim. Your wife's recovery is a miracle. Allah is merciful. But when Karim refused to correct me in private and I began sharing openly that Jesus had healed me, the congratulations turned into whispers. She's being deceived. She's bringing shame to her family. Stay away from her. She is dangerous. One day, as I walked to the market, for the first time in years, women I had once called friends turned their backs to me. Some crossed the street to avoid me. Children whispered as I passed, repeating words they had heard from their parents. Apostate, kafira, traitor. The mosque that had once been my second home closed its doors to me. I was no longer welcome in the community I had served faithfully all my life. The rejection reached into every corner of my life. I lost my teaching role at the madrasa. Parents no longer trusted me to instruct their children. My employer, who had tolerated my years of sick leave, suddenly found a reason to terminate my position. It's unprofessional, they said, to mix religious testimony with workplace conversation. But I knew the truth. Word had spread. My testimony was costing me everything. The worst came from within my own walls. One evening, Karim sat across from me at the dinner table. His face was hard, his voice cold. You must choose, Samira. If you continue with this Jesus, you are no longer my wife. The children froze, their eyes darting between us. My heart shattered. For a moment, I wanted to take it back, to pretend it was all a misunderstanding, to save my marriage, to keep my family whole. But the memory of the 2 verses burned inside me. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. By his wounds, you have been healed. How could I deny the one who had given me life? I met Karim's gaze. My voice shook, but I did not waver. I cannot deny him. Even if it costs me everything, I will follow Jesus. Karim slammed his chair back, stormed from the room, and the door slammed like thunder. Days turned into weeks of silence between us. Karim moved into a separate room. He forbade me from speaking to the children about Jesus. But when he was gone, Layla and I whispered late at night, reading verses together on my phone. Hassan grew more distant, repeating angry lectures from his teachers, trying to drown out his own confusion. Mariam clung to me with innocent love, caught between her father's commands and her mother's testimony. I wept often, not for myself, but for them. I knew my choice was tearing their world apart. And yet, deep inside, I felt peace I had never known. Because for the first time in my life, I was walking in truth. In my loneliness, I cried out to God, "What now, Lord? I have lost everything. Where will I go?" And then, quietly, He answered. Through whispers online, I found others like me, former Muslims who had met Jesus in dreams, visions, or near-death experiences. They gathered in secret, praying together, studying the Bible behind closed doors. When I joined them, I wept. For the first time, I was not alone. Their stories mirrored mine: ostracism, rejection, but also freedom, healing, and joy in Christ. We shared verses, we prayed for one another, and together we found strength. My sickbed had once been my prison, but now it was my pulpit. Every testimony I shared became a spark of hope for someone else trapped in silence. Healing had restored my body. Rejection had tested my heart. But one thing remained: the revelation Jesus had entrusted to me in the place between life and death. The 2 verses were not just for me. They were for the world. And the time had come to speak them boldly, no matter the cost. If you've stayed this far, then you know this isn't just my story, it's a choice we all must face. Will you cling to rituals that cannot save, or will you accept the healing only Jesus can give? Don't keep this to yourself. Subscribe, comment, and share. Someone you know may be waiting for the truth that cost me everything. When I look back on those 15 years of sickness, the silence of my prayers, and the rejection that followed my healing, I see now what I could not see then. It was all preparation. Preparation for one moment, one message, one truth that I was meant to declare. The truth contained in 2 simple verses. I remember Jesus' words as clearly as if He spoke them yesterday. I am sending you back with a mission. And when you return, you will find 2 verses, 2 words of life that will heal not only your body, but your soul. You must share them, Samira. They will be the key for many who are waiting. At the time, I did not understand. I thought the verses were for me alone. I thought they were my private miracle. But the more I shared them in whispers, the more I saw their power. I saw tears in Layla's eyes as she read them aloud. I saw fear in Hassan's heart begin to tremble under their weight. I saw strangers, broken and weary like I once was, breathe hope for the first time when I spoke them. And now I speak them to you. The first verse came to me like a gentle hand resting on my shoulder. Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That was me, weary from years of sickness, burdened by rituals that gave no peace, exhausted from striving to please a God who always felt distant. And in that moment, I realized rest is not in rituals, rest is not in endless prayers, rest is not in a book of rules, rest is in a person. Rest is in Jesus. The second verse came like a sword cutting through chains. 1 Peter 2:24. He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross, so that we might die to sin and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. For 15 years I begged for healing. I searched for it in honey, oils, holy water, verses recited over my body. Nothing worked, because healing was never in those things. Healing was already purchased long ago on a cross. Not only healing for my body, but for my soul. By his wounds, I was healed. And so are you. I will not pretend the cost is small. These words cost me my place in the community. They strained my marriage. They branded me an outcast. But what I gained was worth more than everything I lost. I gained rest. I gained freedom. I gained life. I gained Jesus. So now, I look at you, the one listening, watching, searching. Maybe you are weary. Maybe you are burdened. Maybe your prayers feel like silence. Maybe you have done everything you were told to do, and yet your soul feels empty. Hear me, I was you. And I am telling you now, as one who was healed and set free, the answer is not in striving. The answer is not in rituals. The answer is not in words you do not understand. The answer is in him. Jesus is not just a prophet. He is not just a teacher. He is the Son of God. He bore your sins. He carried your wounds. He offers you rest. And he offers it freely. Do not walk away from this moment. Do not tell yourself you will think about it later. Later may not come. I died once already. I know how quickly life can end. You have heard the verses. You have heard the truth. Now the choice is before you. Will you stay chained to rituals that cannot save? Or will you step into the rest and healing that only Jesus gives? I invite you now, not to me, but to him. Whisper his name. Ask him to show himself to you. He will. Just as he came to me in my sickbed, he will come to you in your weariness. Because his promise is true. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And his cross is enough. By his wounds, you have been healed. If this story has reached you, don't let it pass by. Too many scroll away from the very truth that could save them. Don't let that be you. Subscribe, share, and comment, not to lift my name, but to spread his. Someone you know is weary tonight. Someone you know is burdened. Someone you know is waiting for the words you just heard. Be the one to carry them. I was dying on a sickbed for 15 years. The Quran could not heal me. Allah was silent. But 2 verses from the Bible changed everything. They gave me rest. They gave me healing. They gave me life. And they can do the same for you.